By now, you probably know something important, even if it's a hard reality to face. The fog you feel isn't permanent. The overload isn't your personality. And clarity isn't reserved for other people, which means we can finally talk about the hard part. The cost. Not in dramatic terms, not in worst case scenarios, but in the quiet ways mental overload slowly takes from men who keep functioning anyway. If we talked about cost too early, it would have felt like pressure. But if you've checked out the videos, now you know something different. Clarity is trainable, overload is reversible, and nothing is wrong with you. So this isn't an accusation. It's an invitation to see clearly, because mental overload always charges a price, and it rarely sends an invoice. So let's talk about the first cost: decision quality. Overloaded minds don't stop making decisions. They make narrower ones. When mental bandwidth is full, options feel limited, creativity drops, nuance disappears, risk tolerance distorts. You don't make reckless decisions. You make safe ones, reactive ones, familiar ones. You default instead of choosing. Okay, here's what it looks like in real life. You know something in your work isn't quite right. Maybe it's your role. Maybe it's a partnership. Maybe it's how your time is structured. You don't ignore it, but you do think about it. You just never decide. Not because you're lazy, but because every option feels heavy. So instead of choosing a direction, you default to what you've already been doing. Not because it's best, though. It's because it's familiar. That's not indecision. That's overload shrinking your field of vision. Over time, life doesn't move in the wrong direction. It just stops moving intentionally. That's a cost most men don't notice until years later. And here's the thing most men miss. When your decisions go on autopilot, your attention does too. Because when nothing is clearly chosen, part of your mind stays occupied, holding unresolved questions in the background. And that's where the second cost shows up. Not in what you do, but in how present you are while doing it. Mental overload doesn't usually remove you physically. It removes you internally. You're there, but part of your attention is somewhere else as well. Replaying conversations, running scenarios, carrying unfinished thoughts. So even good moments feel thinner than they should. Not because you don't care, but because your mind never fully arrives. That distance adds up, not loudly though, quietly. And the people around you feel it, even if they don't know how to name it. And the third cost is your emotional range. Overloaded systems simplify emotion. They don't process nuance well. So instead of feelings like joy, curiosity, sadness, compassion, you cycle between irritation, numbness, fatigue. Not because you've hardened, but because your system is conserving energy. You still feel, just less deeply. And that dulling spreads into places you never intended. This one is subtle. Mental overload doesn't make men uncaring. It makes them less available. You listen, but not fully. You respond, but briefly. You engage, but with less margin. And people around you adjust. They bring you fewer things. They ask less of you. They stop expecting depth, not out of resentment, but adaptation. And that quiet distance becomes normal. Until one day it isn't. Overloaded leaders still lead, but leadership shifts under strain. It becomes more controlling or more hands off, more rigid or more avoidant, more reactive. then intentional. Vision narrows. Instead of asking what matters most, you start asking what will keep things from breaking. That's not failure, it's overload. But leadership driven by preservation instead of clarity eventually stagnates. This last one matters even if you don't talk about it much. Mental overload doesn't usually erase belief, it crowds it. Reflections get rushed, stillness feels unsafe, silence fills with noise instead of clarity. So your spiritual life becomes functional, transactional, occasional. Not because your faith is gone, but because attention is fragmented. Depth requires space. Overload rarely allows it. Here's why most men miss all of this. Nothing really breaks. You just keep on showing up, you keep on producing, you keep handling things. So the cost just doesn't look like collapse. It looks something like gradual dulling, slow drift, reduced vitality, and thinner joy. And because it happens slowly, men normalize it. They assume this is adulthood, this is leadership, this is just responsibility. But it's not. It's overload left unaddressed. There's a wise warning here. When burdens multiply without order, the loss isn't immediate failure. It's quiet diminishment. Strength without rhythm leads to erosion, and responsibility without clarity leads to drift. Endurance without renewal leads to hardness. Wisdom doesn't call this faithfulness. It calls for realignment. Not less responsibility, but clear sight within it. Let me make this abundantly clear. This video isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to wake you up gently. Because the cost of overload isn't punishment. It's consequence. And consequences don't mean you failed. They mean something needs attention. Here's the shift that changes everything though. The cost you're paying isn't a verdict. It's feedback. Feedback that says something like, something is being carried without order. Clarity hasn't been protected. Attention is spread way too thin. And feedback is useful if you listen early. Overload doesn't take things all at once. It thins them slowly. In the next video, we'll talk about how clarity is restored in real life. Not theories, not hype, but practical ways men interrupt overload, rebuild internal order, and regain direction without burning everything down. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about stopping the quiet losses you were never meant to accept. If this landed, stay with me. You're not behind. You're becoming aware. And awareness is where change actually starts. Hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.